What's going on YouTube and my renegades? Today we'll be bringing you some Yu-Gi-Oh news of a new mechanic that's coming out. So VJump new rulings are there's now a new typing called Link Summon. So I don't know if a lot of y'all have really faced the troubles, but Pendulum Summoning was way too OP for everything. It was too quick. The fact that you had two completely new zones designed for Pendulum Summoning was just outrageous in itself. And this is a way to kind of nerf it down, make it more balanced. There are some pros and cons to it, but currently I like the idea. Maybe just a little bit more adjustment with it. But so let's go ahead and read through, and we'll kind of discuss as we're going through all this. But introducing Link Summons and changes to the dueling field as well as the Pendulum Summons. And what is this? Yeah, Decode Talker. Again, most of this is in Japanese, so I'm not going to be able to read, 4.0 for you, everything what you need. But just kind of work with me. We'll work our best through it. Let's go ahead and bring this picture up. So this is the, Decode Talker is what I just said? Yeah, Decode Talker, and it is one of the new Link monsters. Notice it has no stars, no levels, no rank or levels, I should say. It has no defense, but instead has a link number there. It also has an attack stat, and then these arrows pointing everywhere. They have black ones, and then I assume these are red. In case any of y'all didn't know, I am colorblind, so I assume these are either red or green. I'm going with red here just from other things I've read, ironically, online. But anyways, so this, it says materials of 2 or more effect monsters for, I guess, the card description there. For number 1, this card gains 500 attack for each monster linked to it. Effect number 2, when an opponent's card effect that targets a card you control is activated, you contribute one of your monsters linked to this card. Negate the activation if you do, destroy it. That's pretty cool. It's basically a new form of XZ's in that sense, where it has XZ's material ability, so it has linked abilities as well, which is kind of cool. But let's keep going in further, because it is very, very heavily involved with other mechanics throughout the game. So look at those distinctive link markers. Use these markers to develop brand new strategies. It goes into your extra deck. So these are new extra deck summons, which is kind of cool. I know a lot of people like the new mechanics of extra deck summons, because what we had were original normal summon, special summoning, effect monster, flip, all that stuff for what we originally had, 2000. And then later came, I guess fusions and rituals were there as well. And then later came on Synchro, and then XZ, and then Pendulum. So let's see a little bit more here. So send materials to the graveyard to link numbers. You can link summon something from your extra deck by sending the same number of monsters that meet the material requirements written on the card's effect box, whose total number equal the link number from the field to the graveyard. So that means they have to be on the field, not your hand. So it's not like a ritual summon or a fusion summon. Okay, decrease materials by using link monsters. Okay, link monsters are treated as the same number of material as the link number. However, to use them, you must match the requirements written on the card. So what I'm understanding from this is, so this is a Link 3 specifically. So if you have a Link 2 on the field, you only require one other effect monster. So the Link 2 plus the effect monster makes a total of Link 3 to create this new Link monster, which is pretty cool. It may not be the quickest mechanic, because let's say you only run effect monsters, you're not trying to run a bunch of Link monsters, because you're not trying to bog down your extra deck, which we'll get into that discussion towards the end of this video as well. But So you're not trying to bog down the extra deck, so you're going to run only maybe 1 or 2 copy of Link monsters, and then a bunch of other effect monsters to go along with it. Which kind of sucks for Manila monsters, whatever you want to call them, beaters, whatever, non-effect monsters, because it's going to kind of take away their viability too, which is... It is good and it isn't bad, but it kind of limits out cards, and it really pushes some out of the game. But either way, let's say you had a Link 2 plus an effect that would create this Link 3, just from what I'm understanding on this mechanic, which granted, this mechanic won't be pushed out until the newest set, and really the whole idea behind this new mechanic is to promote the new Yu-Gi-Oh series coming out along with the new sets as well. I was kind of surprised to see they pushed it out so quickly. So, in either case of Decode Talker, you can either use 3 effect monsters, like I just said, or use 1 Link 2 effect monster and 1 effect monster, which I guess technically if you have a Link 1, which I'm pretty sure they probably won't make, you could just, they might, but you could use 3 Link 1s as well, so, because they're just normal effect monsters. Pay attention to the direction of the link markers. The zones pointed to the zones pointed to by each link marker, and the cards in them will be affected by the link monster and will create new strategies. So something I looked at earlier, and we're going to kind of discuss in a second, is which way these arrows point, because it's kind of crazy. So link monsters have no defense points, and they have special characteristics of being unable to change their battle position by turning to defense position by effects. This right here is a huge mechanic. You cannot turn these guys to defense position, so you can't turn them over to run over top of them. You have to get through their attack, which is good and bad. It's bad because if these are big monsters, they are hard to beat down. Like, especially if you make them where they're not targetable by effects, then they're really hard to break down. Really, really hard to break down. But in the same sense, you can't prevent things like Mirror Force going off by, affecting all attack monsters. You cannot prevent taking battle damage from these. So let's say a Blue Eyes versus this Decoder Talker. The Blue Eyes is going to be bigger, and it's going to run over it every single time. Well, depending on, but it's going to be able to run over it, and there's nothing you can do. You can't put it in defense mode, so you have to think strategically about placing these. You have to really think about their stats. But in the same sense, if you notice the Decoder Talker, whatever it is, has 2,500 attack. That's pretty beefy if you're only getting rid of 3 equivalent effect monsters. So it all depends on what you have. Like, let's say, I mean, it's banned now, but like Giant Germ or something equivalent that pulls out other monsters of the same name, or King's Knight, Queen's Knight, Jack Knight, stuff like that can really pull out, or even the gadgets with an ultimate offering. Again, old game mechanics, a lot of people probably are not going to necessarily know or push towards what I'm saying, but just understand it's the best way for me to link this together and explain it to y'all. But regardless, so you get more, well, I guess you can't do the King's Knights, Queen Knight, Jack Knight, but regardless, what I'm saying is you have to really think about what you're putting out there and what you're getting rid of. So that's crazy in that effect, just thinking about this. So I'm going to pull up this picture real quick, and I'll explain what I was talking about with the direction of the arrows real quick, and then from there we'll explain. So notice how the Decode Talker has the 3 arrows pointing out. So it has one, again, I'm not great with the names of these cards just yet, but this is one XZ's monster. What is this? X Dragon Head, Y Cannon, I don't remember. And then one monster on your opponent's field. So, is the card that is in this zone, is it linked to this card where it can use its linked effect? Meaning you can use its linked effect on your opponent's monster, and vice versa, use the linked effect with summoning extra deck monsters, which we'll get into in a second. But it's just a food for thought, because now you have these 2 extra deck zones, one per player. It's whoever claims them first gets that particular zone. But if the other player, I don't know how to explain this in better terms. You each only get one extra deck monster zone now. So you get one or the other. So if you're not running any link monsters, you can only run one fusion, one synchro, one XZ. Any of those 3, you can only have one of on the field at any given time if you do not have link monsters. Which is crazy. Crazy thought. But let's say you did have this link monster right here, right? So then you could put an XZ's or a fusion summon, anything from your extra deck into one of the sides, which I guess technically includes pendulums, because when pendulums get destroyed and go to your extra deck, then they come back, they have to go into your extra deck zone. So it is really, really watering down pendulums so they cannot flood the field every single turn, which is a great mechanic. But in the same sense, if this is right here, does that mean your opponent can summon an XZ, a synchro, or even a fusion into that slot because it is linked? So it's something we don't know necessarily just yet, but it is kind of a food for thought. Think about it, because it can be both good and bad. It helps them, but you can also link a monster to it. Just thinking about it. So it's going to be a lot more limit on the field and play, especially because if you notice, there's only specific spots it can point, right? So this guy would have to be played in your extra zone up the top because it has your diagonal pointing. Well, let's say it only had the 2 sides, which means you would have to have another link to link this. You would have to have one in the extra deck zone to link it down to your monster zones. Because if it was side to side, you can't summon anything, right? So you'd have to link it down and then do one from side to side as well. So you really have to think about these. You have to really know where you're putting monsters at. So crazy thoughts. All right, anyways, let's keep going forward. When the duel begins, neither extra monster zone is considered to belong to a specific player. So people who run like the Ojamas and stuff that think they're going to be more viable now, you can't lock out that zone. It technically does not belong to anyone until it is claimed. So when a player special summons a monster to one of them, that zone then becomes treated as part of that player's field, and the other then becomes treated as the other player's field. So as soon as you claim one becomes the other. So if you do take it, I guess Ojama still can work, actually. You just have to claim the field before you knock out that field zone. Just food for thought, just deck ideas. Anyways, the tactics of a duel will change drastically depending on who can grab an extra monster zone first. Absolutely. An extra deck monster can only be summoned to the extra monster zone. But if you summon a link monster to one of the extra monster zones first, you can utilize it to the max potential. Agreed. So you pretty much are forced to run a link monster now. Like with this new mechanic, you 100% have to in order to really pop off or XZs, synchros, or fusions in any kind of deck, which is crazy to think about. You are required to play this mechanic. I mean, I guess technically you don't have to. You don't have to have more than one of your extra deck monsters on the field, but in order to utilize those decks, especially with a bunch of these new archetypes like the Zodiacs coming out and others, it really limits them out. So it's good and it's bad. It's good because it's really, really nerfing down Pendulum, but it's bad because it's destroying a lot of decks. The Crystron decks, like I said, the Zodiacs, some of the Cosmos, depending on how you play them. I mean, there's so many things. Even Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes are getting really limited with this stuff too, so you got to be smart. What has been the monster zone will now be treated as the main monster zone, so your 5 normal summoning spots. The pendulum zone is on the left and the right of the spell and trap zone. Awesome. We'll get into that in a second. You can use it as a normal spell or trap zone, but when you place a pendulum card here, it is treated as the pendulum zone. So no more BS, 5 spell and trap and 2 pendulums, because that's crazy. That's 7 cards dedicated to spell and traps. That is a huge nerf for them. Not only that, with it taking up 2 extra slots, it's going to limit how they're going to play their deck. They got to think about setting cards more often, leaving slots open for quick plays, or whatever they need. So that's a huge, huge, huge nerf, and that is one that is needed. I know a lot of people hate Pendulum. There's a few that like them. I mean, obviously they're amazing, but they increase the speed of the game too much where one turn kills are the only thing that matter. Everything else is not viable, and it's not fun, guys. Let's be completely honest. That's not fun. So pendulum zones pointed at by link markers can only be can be used to bring out extra deck monsters. So zones pointed at by link markers. Okay, that's what we were talking about earlier with the arrows pointing different directions and stuff. Okay, although extra deck monsters can only be summoned to the extra monster zone normally, if you have a link monster in the extra monster zone, the zones pointed at by the link markers can be used to summon extra deck monsters. So if you get out a link summon quickly, you can bring out a fusion, synchro, XYZ monster in succession. Of course, you can summon another link monster in one of these zones, so you can play your cards right. So if you play your cards right, you can fill your entire main zone with extra deck monsters. Now, well, let me finish this. The new metagame will require careful consideration where to place monsters. Now, think about this. Let me bring up this picture again. So these 5 are your monster zones now, right? These 2 are gone because there's no more pendulum. So let's say you have a link monster here that gives you 3 open slots. So only these 3 can be used for any of your synchro, fusion, whatever. So what this does is it forces you to play another link at least right here if it was a 3 down. So link to open up right here, right here, which leaves that one shut. So at any given time, unless otherwise stated, you can only have 3 extra deck monsters in your normal monster zone with a link monster in your extra monster zone. Crazy thought right there. So you are limiting down the extra deck heavy play in this meta drastically. So people are going to actually have to start really thinking about their extra deck and playing them smartly. Now, I'm not saying this is the greatest mechanic, but man, does this slow down the game and make you really think methodically about your deck. Now, like I said earlier, if this arrow pointing up means that this specific monster zone can have a extra deck monster summoned in there, if your opponent has one pointing down there, well, then you could put a link there and then put like a 3 link there and have, 4 XZ, Synchro, Fusion, whatever in your normal monster zone. But again, who knows if that's going to be the mechanic. I kind of think it's going to be that way, just so you have to think wisely about how you're playing certain monsters, but we'll figure it out. But generally, in a given game, depending on how they're going to build these link monsters, you're only going to be able, because most people are going to run a link monster right there to open up the field, so then you're going to be limited to basically 3 extra deck monsters, as opposed to filling up a full field of 5. Doesn't seem like that big of a hit to some people, but others, that's huge. That is huge. You were dropping synchro decks like nobody's business. Same with XZs. XZs are running rampant right now. Well, outside of the just necessarily pendulum, but XZs can run rampant just because, especially like rank 4s, can blow through the water just depending on how you play them. So I don't know, guys. It's crazy. I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be a great mechanic to really change up the game. But we're going to go ahead and go through this Q&A real fast. And then after that, I want to know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below too. So if special summon an extra deck monster normally and it goes to the graveyard, I want to special summon it with Monster Reborn, which zone does it go to? That's pretty nice. It goes to a main monster zone, not the extra. So thinking to that, granted, Monster Reborn is now a forbidden card, but just for fun play or other things that could special summon from the grave back to the field, that is a way to get around the mechanic. You can take an extra deck, extra zone, whatever monster, an extra deck monster, play it, then use it for something else to get it, send it to the graveyard, then take it from the graveyard back to the extra monster zone. That's another way you can get more on the field. It's pretty good. So, can you use Book of Moon on link monsters? Nope. A link monster cannot be face down, so you cannot target with Book of Moon. That is crazy. That is a huge hit too right there. Like, that's wild. That's a huge change in mechanics. I know I keep saying huge, but that's really what this news is. It's massive. If your opponent's only monster is in the extra monster zone, can you attack them directly? If there's a monster in the extra monster zone, unless some kind of effect is in play, you would have to attack that monster first. I didn't even think about that, but that's actually a really good question. So now you have 6 monster zones instead of 5. So now you have to worry about 1 extra threat, quote unquote. So that's actually kind of cool. I never even would have thought about that because it's an extra monster zone. But yeah, that's good. That's good. Can you destroy 2 spell and trap cards in your leftmost and rightmost spell and trap zones with Wavering Eyes? The leftmost and rightmost spell and trap zones are regular spell and trap zones and do not become pendulum zones unless you activate a pendulum card in them, or if a pendulum card is placed in them by a card's effect. A spell and trap card in either of those zones cannot be destroyed by Wavering Eyes. Okay, makes sense. I think that would be a little broken if you could just pop off all the pendulums like that. But oh, sorry. Again, this is a huge nerf to Pendulum, which makes me happy because Pendulum, it's just too powerful of a mechanic. It really was. I don't think that Konami was putting their best foot forward when they thought about it. I think they were really going more for a mechanic for their show as opposed to for the play of people. So I'm really happy that this is coming out. But in the same sense, all these extra deck monster heavy decks are going to take a huge hit unless they let us extend the extra decks at least to 20, I would say, because the link monsters you need in, that could take up to 5 between the difference of 15 and 20. Extend it from 15 to 20, that way you are not hindered overly too much, so you can have 5 link monsters in there, that way you can link your field as necessary while still playing your extra deck. Could just be me. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and comment down below. Let me know what you think about these crazy linked rules, about this new, really, pendulum nerfing as a whole, and just this wild mechanic, because this is going to change everything in Yu-Gi-Oh, guys. So just let me know what you think, and make sure you have a great day, guys. Bye.